Good morning, this is Elaine Valbrecht. Welcome to the 2019 Housing Trust Fund Rental Assistance RFP information session. This webinar will address the application process for the 2019 request for proposals. The session will be recorded, and the webinar recording, the PowerPoint, and the questions and answers will be posted on our website within a few days. Minnesota Housing's mission is to provide access to safe, decent, affordable housing and build stronger communities across the state by offering products and services to help Minnesotans buy and fix up their homes and stabilize neighborhoods, communities, and families. Minnesota Housing also supports the development and preservation of affordable rental housing through both the financing and long-term asset management of projects and developments. The agency has pioneered a successful model for supportive housing that helps stabilize the lives of some of the state's most vulnerable citizens. This presentation will cover the following topics: an overview of the Housing Trust Fund, a description of the overarching themes woven throughout the RFP, the application itself, submission tips, and finally, there will be time for questions. The Housing Trust Fund was established by the Minnesota Legislature in 1988 and expanded to provide operating subsidy and rental assistance in 2002. In 2005, the HTF rules were modified to add a funding priority for programs and developments serving households experiencing long-term homelessness. The Housing Trust Fund currently provides funding to 39 grantees statewide, including nonprofit and tribal organizations and housing authorities, serving 70 counties and 7 tribal nations. Funds have been made available through a biennial RFP process since 2013, and prior to that, the RFPs were every year. The new grant term will be October 1st, 2019 through September 20th of 2021. One of the features of the Housing Trust Fund rental assistance is its flexibility to be used for programs focusing on different populations, including families and individuals, adults, and youth. Funds can be used for rental assistance, security deposits, application fees, administrative fees, and other fees to obtain landlord participation or to prevent repeat episodes of homelessness. The length of time is limited to 60 months, with exceptions for persons on a waiting list for a permanent source of rental assistance, or for those who cannot apply due to closed waiting lists, or for those ineligible for federal rental assistance. The maximum rental subsidy is the difference between 30% of the gross income and the local payment standard. The goal of the Housing Trust Fund Rental Assistance Program is to achieve housing stability for those with the greatest barriers. Services may be funded by federal, state, local, or private sources. A transition plan is required for all participants, elements of which may include a federal rental subsidy, such as Section 8, and or increased income, including accessing benefits, education, employment training, and employment. The program collects data using the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, and it is our hope that this system will be able to provide more reports on outcomes for our grant administrators in the future. Entities who are eligible to apply for Housing Trust Fund funds include nonprofit and for-profit organizations, cities, public housing agencies, and tribal nations. This RFP is open to current grantees and new applicants if they are proposing to serve an unserved area of the state. The governor supports and asks state employees to view our work through an equity lens. So we consider how such an equity lens impacts our eligibility statement, new applicants proposing to serve an unserved region of the state. We are open to how unserved may be interpreted and defined, particularly from a racial or ethnic population perspective. All proposed interpretations should be well-defined, supported, and substantiated. Households should be referred through the local coordinated entry system. Household income at initial occupancy cannot exceed 60% of the area median income for the Twin Cities metropolitan area, and most current programs serving high priority homeless or long-term homeless households have a priority for households with income at 30% AMI or less. Housing must meet HUD's housing quality standards before any subsidy is paid at initial occupancy and must have a passing inspection at least annually thereafter to continue to pay the rental subsidy. Effective October 1st, which is the start of the new grant term, these items will be required of all grantees. The annual narrative report, participation in local Family Homeless Prevention and Assistance Program, or FHPAP meetings, attendance at an annual grantee meeting for all selected grantees in a format to be determined at a later date, and use of the preliminary practice model. Throughout the application, you will see a number of themes running through questions and instructions. Some will introduce new requirements for the biennium beginning October 1st. Most of the Housing Trust Fund RFP objectives fall under these themes. Prioritize those with the most barriers to housing stability, increase housing access, address regional needs, and coordinate resources. The first theme is to prioritize households with the most barriers to housing stability. Program expectations are that Housing Trust Fund programs are serving persons who are homeless with a priority for those with the greatest barriers to housing stability. All households should be referred through the local coordinated entry system. Programs provide or link through partnerships to services to assist households to achieve and maintain housing stability. You'll see this year more than ever we are asking questions about the service component to learn more of what's provided and how it is working. We want to know much more about the integration of the rental assistance and services and how the rental assistance is being or is not used in conjunction with other community resources. Applicants who are not following this program design with a currently funded HTF grant and who are selected for funding in this RFP will be expected to address this through attrition as households exit Housing Trust Fund. Proposed program changes should be described in the application. Second theme is to increase housing access. Current Housing Trust Fund administrators and new applicants may submit proposals serving areas of the state currently not served or unserved by a Housing Trust Fund program. This map is available as part of the application materials on Minnesota Housing's Housing Trust Fund Rental Assistance webpage. Unfilled areas in white are counties that are not currently served by a Housing Trust Fund Rental Assistance program. Continuing the theme of increasing housing access is that there is up to $250,000 in total available as a one-time opportunity to fund housing navigation services. This will be discussed later in the presentation. In addition, current grantees may propose to increase the target number of households they will serve. These requests will be evaluated on factors including performance, capacity, utilization, need, and housing availability within the proposed service area. Continuing in the theme of increasing housing access, January 1st of this year, current grantees serving long-term homeless participants were given the option to require either a high priority homeless or a long-term homeless eligibility. Effective October 1st, Minnesota Housing HTF rental assistance programs serving LTH or HPH households will require only high priority homeless eligibility. The purpose of the eligibility change is that it is easier to document high priority homeless eligibility. The time to utilize the Housing Trust Fund rental assistance is reduced because with high priority homeless eligibility, providers will not have to spend time documenting long-term homeless eligibility. And households will be prioritized based on their assessed needs and local priorities. The high priority homeless eligibility option only applies to Minnesota Housing funded programs. If you have other funding that requires long-term homeless eligibility, you will still need to follow the long-term homeless eligibility and documentation requirements for that funding source. Current examples include housing support, formerly GRH or group residential housing, and the long-term homeless supportive services grant fund. In May of 2018, we implemented a temporary policy change for current grantees, allowing more flexible use and streamlined process of Housing Trust Fund for housing-related expenses, including additional security deposits, application fees, and utility arrearages payments for arrearages accumulated prior to admission to a Housing Trust Fund rental assistance program. The purpose of this temporary policy change was to increase housing access for current grantees. This policy will continue in the 2019 to 2021 biennium until further notice. Our next theme is to address regional needs. If you are not aware of the identified priorities in your continuum of care, you can contact their leadership. The link is on the slide. We will be asking how your proposal meets regional needs and aligns with the continuum of care priorities. You'll also see a focus on equity in the application. We are trying to further our work towards ensuring that households who are disparately impacted by homelessness will have access to Housing Trust Fund programs and will benefit from those programs in an equitable way. Reporting on how you do this will be part of the new annual narrative report, as how we serve those disparately impacted by homelessness is one area Minnesota Housing will be tracking more closely. Our last theme is resource coordination. Minnesota Housing anticipates closer alignment of the Housing Trust Fund and Family Homeless Prevention Assistance Program resources, increasing the capacity to serve a continuum of needs. To further that alignment, Housing Trust Fund grantees will be required to participate on an FHPAP advisory committee within their service area to build relationships with their local FHPAP grantees and subgrantees and begin thinking about how they might further align their resources. We know that many of you already have these relationships and may receive funding from FHPAP. This biennium, up to $23 million is available to fund tenant-based programs. These are programs that use rental assistance to house participants in eligible housing of their choice within the community. Each program determines their service area, which defines where the awarded funds may be used. This amount includes a total of $250,000 to fund housing navigation services. This is the total available for this purpose and may be split between multiple applicants. The RFP instructions state that the available funding amount may change based on the legislature. We anticipate base funding equal to that of the current biennium, but that will not be final until the budget for the 2020-21 biennium is approved. It's important to know that we cannot award more than the amount requested by the applicant, and that consideration will be given to the proportion of funding between the Metro and Greater Minnesota. In the following slides, I'll walk through the specifics of the application. There are 6 sections of the application that apply to all of the applicants. These are the funding request, program design, program outcomes, diversity and inclusion, collaboration, preliminary practice model, and grant administration. I will briefly walk through each of the sections to give you an outline of what information we are looking for in the application. The funding request is the narrative that tells us how you arrived at your request. If you are a current grantee and propose a change to the number of households you will serve, this is where you do this. It's important to describe your ability to assist additional households. Also, if you are a current grantee and expect to return more than 5% of your current funding, this is where you will explain what factors, in addition to market conditions, contributed to the underutilization. The program design section consists of 2 parts: program framework and program services. Program framework describes your program structure, including the listed elements: service area, meeting community need, use of coordinated entry, housing availability, and search activities. We are looking for a clear description for how your program serves a community need. Proposals to serve unserved areas should be described here. There should be a clear plan to serve the entire service area, as well as show how proposals to serve unserved areas will meet community needs. All Housing Trust Fund grantees are expected to participate in their local coordinated entry system And if they are not, a precise timeline and a plan of how they will implement this in the coming biennium should be included in the application. You'll be asked to describe the availability of eligible housing in your service area and what you do to help applicants to your program locate and obtain housing. Program services. Program expectations are that housing support services are provided in conjunction with rental assistance to help participants achieve housing stability. If the applicant is not the service provider, the preference is for a partnership between the applicant and the service provider with personal connections versus simple referrals and ongoing communication between parties. This biennium, we want to know much more about the integration of the rental assistance and services and how the rental assistance is aligned with other community resources. Engagement strategies should be specific. Describe the creation of transition plans and how they will be maintained and revised over time, including how often this will be done. Next section is program outcomes. Clearly describe any barriers you anticipate will prevent participants from transitioning successfully within 5 years and how many households this would affect. Provide program goals, including strategies to achieve the goal and how achievement will be measured. Current grantees should show the length of stay for households in your program as of March 31st, 2019, and the percentage of positive exits in the current grant term. Current grantees should also describe actual outcomes of the goals set in the 2017 application, including how unmet goals will be addressed. The next section is diversity and inclusion. Indicate strategies to ensure access for persons in your service area disparately affected by homelessness. Describe how your leadership and staff represent the people that you propose to serve and what steps you are taking to achieve greater parity. The collaboration section is short, but here's where you will see the coordination with your local continuum of care and the Family Homeless Prevention Assistance Program. When our programs are aligned with the state plan to prevent and end homelessness and with the COC goals, we can really make an impact on reducing homelessness. When we align our funding, we can effectively deploy our resources. A new part of the application this year is the preliminary practice model. The model was designed by state staff and members of the Heading Home Funders Collaborative and was driven by feedback from stakeholders about what program components they felt made a difference when assisting homeless and at-risk households. The model includes both components that were being utilized by some providers as well as components that seem to be missing from the toolbox of some providers as well. For this year, we want you to give us a straightforward assessment of which components your organization has implemented already. There are no points given for this portion. However, there will be up to 5 points for the second question in this section, which asks you to name one component you will work on for the next biennium. It can be a component that you have already started working on but aren't quite finished. Giving a timeline, staff responsible, and more detail will result in higher points for this question. The next section of the application addresses grant administration. Grantees should describe how they will address staff training and turnover to ensure continuity in grant administration. We recommend that more than one person is trained in income certification, inspections, and the draw request process. Grantees should also describe how they monitor funds use and address over or underutilization. For those applying for housing navigation funds, up to $250,000 is available. This is a one-time opportunity, this biennium, and the funds may be split among multiple applicants. It's important to note that the funds are available only to applicants selected for funding of Housing Trust Fund rental assistance programs. We will not award any housing navigation funds as a standalone award. An evaluation of the effectiveness of the housing navigation services, if awarded, will be required. Eligible uses for applicants requesting housing navigation funds under this RFP include the listed items on this and the next slide. These are the same activities allowed under the FHPAP program. We have landlord recruitment, utilizing housing search engines and locating opportunities, attaining ongoing communications with landlords, keeping an active list of waiting list openings, and assisting households in completing housing applications, assisting households in obtaining application fees, transporting households to housing appointments, assisting in communication to a potential landlord of any housing barriers, tenant education on landlord and tenant rights and responsibilities, and expediting the move-in timeline when feasible between the date of acceptance and lease signing. This section of the application applies only to new applicants. New applicants' review will include past experience with state or federal funding, administration of rental assistance, including the population proposed to serve, program management, monitoring, and evaluation. Factors include financial aspects of the program, draw request submission, funds disbursement to landlords, maintaining an income certification schedule for participants, existing financial oversight, and internal controls. The application also asks about experience with reporting through the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, the Self-Sufficiency Matrix, and conducting or contracting for housing quality standards inspection. The performance section is for current grantees. Current grantees will be evaluated on performance in the current grant term, including their utilization, the number of households served, basis versus what was proposed, the timeliness and accuracy of the report submission, and communication with Minnesota Housing. The next section of our presentation is regarding scoring methodology. The application instructions give you information on the overall scoring of the application with the scoring criteria and the maximum score for each category. The main body of the application has a maximum score of 65 points. I'm not going to read all of these, but they are available in the instructions. These first two slides cover the areas applicable to all applicants. New applicants can receive up to 35 points for the new applicant section. Qualification forms will be reviewed under this category. This is to allow new applicants to compete for performance points, which compares to the 35 points that current grantees have the opportunity to receive. Current grantees can receive up to 35 points for performance that includes utilization, actual number of households served per month, submitted reports on time, and timely communication. For applicants also applying for housing navigation funds, an additional maximum of 10 points is available. In this section, I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of the budget template. Refer to the instructions tab if you have questions as you complete the other tabs. If you're not familiar with the other the other pages in the budget form, I suggest you read through the instructions first and then look closely for each section. Complete the white sections in the funding request summary. The yellow sections will auto-populate based on information you enter in the budget tab. Note that under service area, the counties and tribal nations are drop-down menus. I want to call out a few things on the contact information tab. First, the applicant agency name should be the legal name of the applicant that will appear on the grant contract for selected applicants. Right under that is the authorized representative, who should be the person authorized to execute the contract per delegated authority, board resolution, or bylaws. It will also be the person named on the grant contract as the primary point of contact, but may not be the person most closely involved with overseeing the program. Additional contact information is also collected, and all listed contacts will receive grantee correspondence, not just the authorized representative. The last section to complete is the HMIS agency name, which is asking for the person and agency responsible for reporting your data in HMIS. In this section, I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of the budget template. The section in the upper left is for current grantees and should be completed with information from the current grant term. If you are a grantee who is consolidating or combining your grants, please provide information about each current grant on the standalone utilization projection worksheets on the website. The utilization projection is a worksheet to calculate the amount of funding your proposal will require over the next 2-year term. A little hard to see here, but there is help text for columns D, E, and H. So if you hover over those where you see the little red triangle in the upper right-hand corner of those columns, that will give you a little more information. Of course, they're also addressed in the instructions. To calculate the administrative fee, consult the Housing Trust Fund Program Guide, section 3.02, page 7 for the formula. For applicants who are proposing to serve high priority homeless or long-term homeless persons, use the LTH percentage calculation from the guide. The minimum administrative fee is $45 and the maximum administrative fee is $60. We cannot award amounts higher than are requested. If selected, your funding amount may be lower and your administrative fee may differ from the requested amount. For current grantees who are combining grants in this request, you must submit a combined budget for your request with this document. Excuse me, I've gone past the document. There we go. In addition, you may break out budgets by program to provide clarity to your application if you wish using the standalone workbook, or just submit the standalone worksheet with current grant information. Please feel free to contact me with questions about this. The next section is how you submit your application and what needs to go with it. Many of you will be applying for more than $100,000, so this will apply to you. You need to determine if you are subject to the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and in addition, you need to provide documentation of compliance if the box you check on the form indicates that you need to do that. If you are a non-governmental entity and applying in the RFP, you will need to provide financial documentation. The type of financial statement you provide is related to your agency's overall budget and is based on how much the applicant agency has in total gross revenue in a given year. Even if you have recently submitted relevant financial documentation to Minnesota Housing, you must submit it with this application as well. I can't emphasize enough the importance of submitting the right documents with the right information and submitting the application on time. On the day that we receive applications, our staff must ensure that the application meets the threshold criteria. This happens before we review application materials in their entirety and before we hand off applications to reviewers to score. Everyone should highlight these bullets because if you do not complete one of these tasks, your application could be rejected before it is even reviewed. Submit the application on or before noon on Friday, May 17th, and make sure you answer every question in the application. Sign the application and submit a signature page. Include the budget form and ensure that it is complete. All the application materials must be submitted in their original format to the secure upload tool, which can be found on our website. Instructions on how to use the secure upload tool can also be found on the website. This may look redundant to the slides that I used when I was talking about the threshold criteria, but you will be submitting all of the following documents: the application signature page, the budget form, the affirmative action certification with the attached certificate of compliance if applicable, the financial statement. New applicants will also submit qualification forms. You'll also see this in the RFP instructions, but I wanted to provide the timeline for the RFP. We've talked about the application due date of Friday, May 17th. Minnesota Housing staff will make recommendations to the board on Thursday, July 25th, and those selected should receive notification that day. If awarded funds, we will then enter the due diligence phase. Tuesday, August 6th, we will hold a mandatory due diligence session. In prior bienniums, we were given some leeway on the execution date of agreements, which meant that they could be executed after October 1st and still be retroactive to October 1st. This is no longer allowable. Thus, all of the required due diligence items must be submitted to us no later than Friday, September 6, 2019, in order for us to execute agreements by October 1st. Thanks for attending this information session on the RFP. You can still send additional questions to me, and we'll address them in the FAQs as well. Thank you.